This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On Air.
People really believing in the work that they're doing can enable people to do great things. And also being given the ownership and accountability to go out and do the work is, amazing. I think what has helped them keep going and perform at those levels is having a clear direction and sense of purpose in what they're doing, being given ownership to make decisions. So the leadership team of that program hardly made any decisions throughout the whole time. They pushed decisions down to people who were doing the work as much as they could, giving people autonomy, trying out new ways of working, which is a real focus for us as well, and being more adaptive and keeping things as transparent as possible so that people are informed, can make good decisions, can do great work.
Hello and welcome back to Making Work Better, the show to help you realise it's time to stop fracking human resources and to make work humanly sustainable. To help you work out how to do that, I've tracked down the workplaces that are already making work better for people and performance, and I'm bringing you their stories and their strategies. I'm Dr. Denise Quinlan, and today I'm delighted to welcome Brooke Stringer, People Development Manager at Mercury. Brooke was the first person I spoke to for the Making Work Better research project, so if I sound inspired, astonished, or just plain relieved at times, it was because I was so thrilled to hear about this kind of work happening. Before then, the survey I led had uncovered significant concerns and burnout risk across all of New Zealand and lots of organisations. So welcome, Brooke. When we were getting ready for this conversation, I said I wanted to talk about recent challenges that Mercury's faced, and you said it could be really useful to go back a little bit further.
Yeah, when I started at Mercury, we were in the midst of the never-ending Auckland lockdown at the back end of 2021. And that was really interesting for a company like Mercury and probably lots of other orgs that were spread over New Zealand, because we had some people in Auckland, we had people through the rest of the top of the North Island, and sort of that Waikato Bay of Plenty area was actually going in and out of lockdowns as well, which lots of people forget, which is quite significant for people. And so we had people in Auckland all at home, all isolated, feeling that stress, but actually for the most part able to do their work at home, whereas our people on the ground on our generation sites had to be there to do the work. So there's that element for them. They feel there's an element of risk, right? Back then, going to work, you might get sick. And also the immense pressure of, we're keeping the lights on for New Zealand. If we all get sick here, we can't run this station. And that's a very serious risk. And there's probably not many people in New Zealand that would go to work and carry that level of risk. You know, if I'm sick and I take that to work, the station could get shut down and we don't have enough power to supply that to New Zealanders. You know, that's pretty hefty pressure to hold. And so through that time, there was just varying issues of what people were experiencing and how that was playing out for them in their work and their personal life, which, you know, as we know, is completely intertwined. What we found was that people really wanted connection. They wanted a chance to connect with their leaders, with other people. And so that was what was really important. It really stood out. We did a wellbeing check-in survey, and there must have been a call. I don't think I was part of it. But one of our GMs was trying to talk about something very important, I'm sure, like GMs do. But she had one of her young children crawling all over her. Yeah. And that really resonated with people, that was real for her too. You know, she's a mum and her kids need her, and that's what other people were experiencing. And so it was really that connection.
So that need for connection was huge, and the challenge of meeting it. And it's like with each of these challenges, there were potential upsides, and the sense of realness that we all got a bit real, I think. Yeah. And we got to see that everyone is human.
Yes. Yeah. And we really leant into that because we decided that something that might help is a regular call every week hosted by our exec, and for just an update, I suppose. Back then things were changing quite often with what level are we? Are we 3.1 or, red level A or whatever it was?
Yeah.
So there was updates of that kind, but also it was just a genuine chance for the execs to front up and be available to talk and answer questions. That started, and it's still going.
And so that was, if you like, the challenge. The challenge was isolation and working remotely. And the strategy that was put in place was regular connection and update at a very real level. And that's proven so successful that you're still doing it?
Yes. Yeah, we are. Yep. People love it. The sense of psychological safety that I think it's created is immense, because you can ask any question of the executive and they'll answer it. And they don't always have the answer, but they'll give it a go and they'll say, oh, I'm not sure about this, or that's a great question. But it's all open and they give it a go. People can ask. So
it's really built access to your GMs and a commitment. It's demonstrating a commitment to transparency, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. From my perspective in an internal comms role, it's a great internal comms channel because we can get them fronting up some of the important things that are going on and talking about it. But generally, at least half of the 30-minute session every week is just open to the floor for questions.
Yeah. Nice. And so that's been something that's worked for the people who've been working remotely. What about the generation staff? What have been their challenges, if you like, and how have they been addressed?
Yeah. They have really unique challenges, and even something like this is something that's not accessible to everyone in the business. So we're really aware of that, They've probably had their toolbox meeting at 7 and they're into the work by the time the meeting at 9:15 comes around, so they're not at their desks. So that is something that we're actually still considering and figuring out. They have their kind of own microcultures at each of our stations and sites, and that sense of team and camaraderie that they have amongst themselves is, I think, probably a really great strength and protective for them and their well-being in those teams.
Then the next challenge is how do we bring these different parts of the business together, and what kind of strategies have you tried?
Well, something that's been quite big for us this year is our organisational purpose. So a couple of years back, we engaged in a bit of a journey around our culture and understanding our culture, and something that came out of that was that our purpose wasn't really that fit for purpose anymore. It was really linked to the retail side of our business and quite customer focused. And people on generation sites couldn't really relate to that because it was a little bit too far removed. And sure, they knew that their role was really important in creating electricity, but in helping New Zealanders enjoy it in wonderful ways just didn't really connect to them.
That's more the responsibility of the consumer who is, who's bought it. Yeah. So it was bringing purpose back to Mercury and to the generation people. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Moving our purpose back to something that would resonate for our people rather than something that kind of led our marketing approaches. Yeah. And then in the middle of the year, we launched our new purpose, which really speaks to the heart of what Mercury exists to do. So our purpose statement is taking care of tomorrow, connecting people in place today.
Nice.
The people on our generation sites love that because they're working on assets that have been around for 100 years, and a lot of their work is not only generating electricity, but actually making sure that those assets will stay around for another 100 years. Then we came together with Trustpower. So we purchased the retail arm of Trustpower. We welcomed about 500 new people into our business and have since been working on bringing the businesses together. That meant that we kind of needed to redo some of that work because we had all these new people and a whole different perspective that we needed to include.
Great timing with the bringing on board the Trustpower people. For them, there are so many times where mergers and acquisitions, you just get absorbed, and it's like, there's some nice words said at the start, but often it's suck it up and get on with it. And so for them to actually feel they had a voice and that their voice was being listened to and altering the trajectory of the Mercury purpose statement must have been really helpful in terms of allowing people to feel they came on board.
Yeah, I think so. And that has been the approach for the integration program of work the whole way through, that it's not just an acquisition. It actually is, how do we not just take the best from both, but actually forge a new way forward and together, create a new business. But the purpose was a great piece of work to enable some of that culturally, because it did bring people on the journey. We had to as well, because the traditional Mercury business model was really around electricity, and we were sort of dipping our toes into things like broadband, but it was still about electricity, whereas Trustpower was a true multi-utility retailer. So they had electricity, broadband, mobile, they were kind of giving that full package, and they had big teams of telco people. So if you're just talking about electricity, it means nothing to them, or very little.
Yeah.
Which, hence the new purpose statement, which...
Say that again. It's such a lovely statement. Taking care of tomorrow.
Connecting people in place today. Yeah.
It's short, it's sharp, it's memorable.
And it allows people to find their meaning in it without it being too airy-fairy.
How do you know this is working? What kind of impact is it having? And I know it's early days to be seeing results, but... Yeah,
it is. We've if I reflect on some data first, and then I'll talk about colloquially. So we've always asked a question in our employee pulse survey about connection to purpose, and it's actually always scored quite high, even before the launch of the purpose. I don't take that as a disheartening factor, because the comments that used to be left beside that were things like, I know that my role is really important. I don't relate to this purpose statement that we have. That doesn't detract from me connecting to my own purpose.
I have purpose despite the purpose statement.
Yeah, exactly. We're not seeing any of those comments anymore. People the score is still high, and people are still now connected to a purpose altogether that actually relates to the purpose that they could already see for themselves. So that's great. More colloquially, we're seeing people use the language and hearing it all the time. Someone that I occasionally talk to is a people leader in our payment solutions team, and she has her Slack status just set as the purpose. She's not updating it with I'm working from home or I'm in the office. Her status is the purpose, and that's really cool for me to see. So that kind of thing. And like you said, it's a little bit early to see, but we're hearing it. We're hearing people talk about it when they're making decisions and things, or calling things out. Like, why have we got paper cups over there because the dishwasher's not working, when we could just walk downstairs with our cup? That's not really taking care of tomorrow if we're using a disposable cup, those kind of things.
It's being used as a value statement, as a way of evaluating action. That's really powerful.
Yeah.
So it's being lived. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Brooke, I know you've worked on lots of policies and changes to ensure that Mercury can attract and keep the best staff. Tell me about one of those that's dear to your heart.
Well, something that we have recently done as well is we've revamped our parental leave policy. So I wouldn't say we were leading the charge. There were lots of organisations that had already done a really great job with their parental leave policies, and we were a little bit slow off the mark. But I'm pretty confident to say now I believe we've got one of the best policies in the country around supporting parents. It's very inclusive. I can say all this because I personally rewrote it. We pulled out all of the things that might limit people having access to the benefits. So we don't care when you started at Mercury, you could be having a baby on your second day
and you'll still
get access to all of these benefits. We've tried to think about the role of the male or the other parent who's not the one giving birth or pregnant. And equally also if neither of the parents are, if they're adopting, if there's anything else that's happening for them, just trying to make the policy genuinely as inclusive as possible. We've done some cool other things that I think recognise the difference in situation that people might face. So, for example, partners get 4 weeks of paid leave, which they can take in the first 13 months of the child's life or after the point of adoption or birth. So there's a flexibility element there, because what we heard when I talked to some partners is that actually, they might have taken a week off around the birth, but then, their wife, for example, their wife's mother comes to visit for 2 or 3 weeks and is actually all over the help at home. So he was kind of sitting around like a bit of a spare. Where the help was needed was after she had then left again. So that flexibility to take the leave when it works is really important.
Nice, yeah.
Equally, if you have twins, some of our benefits are per child. So if you had twins, and then the partner's leave is per child, so you get 8 weeks leave because you're probably going to need it.
Yeah. What would you say has been the biggest learning in the last 12 to 18 months?
I think having worked so closely with the purpose and then seeing kind of from afar, because I've not been directly involved, but in the integration program of work, that element of people really believing in the work that they're doing can enable people to do great things, and also being given the ownership and accountability to go out and do the work is amazing. Our retail integration program of work has just been an absolute feat for the people involved in that. They've built new websites, new apps, they've been migrating customers, and they've got it all done basically in this year. It's just astonishing what they've achieved. And I think despite there being a lot of elements of exhaustion and people, I hope not getting quite to burnout, but probably close, I think what has helped them keep going and perform at those levels is having a clear direction and sense of purpose in what they're doing, being given ownership to make decisions. So the leadership team of that program hardly made any decisions throughout the whole time. They pushed decisions down to people who were doing the work as much as they could, giving people autonomy, trying out new ways of working, which is a real focus for us as well, and being more adaptive and keeping things as transparent as possible so that people are informed, can make good decisions, can do great work.
What were some of the new ways of working? I'm curious, because honestly, I'm so excited when you say this, because mentally I'm ticking boxes going, these are things we know prevent burnout. Yes, there's workload, but and we're all tired, but purpose, ownership, autonomy, really flexible working, we know these are protective. So I'm just curious, what were some of the new ways of working?
So we're trying to embrace more adaptive culture and adaptive practice and adaptive ways of working. So it's definitely very new for us, but it's kind of like agile, but not strictly agile. It's taking what works. So for some parts of the business, working in squads, having regular scrums, all those kind of ceremonies that are related to agile works really well. For other parts of the business, not so much. We're probably unlikely to be getting our people on the phones doing scrums every day because there's just no need for that kind of thing, unless they're, kind of doing some other work as well. But it has really been centering the work around value streams, working in squads and having some levels of ceremonies kind of depending on what the work has been. The integration program's really embraced all of these ways of working, and having those ceremonies has really helped them keep
and
keep going.
When you say ceremonies, what kind of things do you mean?
So that's kind of like a agile terminology, but it's scrum meetings, sprint meetings, mainly meetings, but they're those things that are regular and people come to them, they know what to expect. They share their info, they get updated, they get a sense of clarity and direction and purpose probably from those meetings, and then they get to go back and know exactly what they're doing with their work. Or if they've raised any issues, hopefully they've got a way forward with those issues. All those kind of things happen in those ceremonies.
That's exciting because what you're talking about there is adaptive ways of working, which the effect of which is to provide greater role clarity, clearer prioritization and focus for work. And one of the things that really fuels burnout is a lack of clarity and a lack of clear prioritization, because there is always going to be more than we can do today. And so being able to go, this is what I'm going to focus on, and having a sense of a clear mission, all of that really, I think of it as running the defrag program in my head.
Yeah, totally. And that's prompted another thought about a principle that's been really important for that program of work was this concept of fit for now, they called it. So rather than, and it was a bit of a struggle for all the perfectionists across the business involved in that work, because there was a big element of, that in a project you have time, scope and money, and they decided that time was one of the most important things. We've got to balance those other things as well, but we were in a bit of a sprint, we were racing. And so what can we achieve? We can't achieve everything. We have to go with fit for now. What will enable us to move forward, but it doesn't have to be perfect.
Oh, I'm adding that to our company list. We talk about real is better than perfect, done is better than good, fit for now. Lovely. Yeah. And so how did people respond to that?
I think quite well. Like that language is quite pervasive, especially through the integration program. Like I said, there were definitely some people that I talked to that it was harder for.
The dyed-in-the-wool perfectionists, Yeah,
and the people who are really in the detail, and they can kind of see that some of the times when you're embracing fit for now and you're leaving things undone or not perfect or partially completed, there will be issues that will crop up down the line because of that. You're going to have to come back and fix some of these things at some point, but for now, that kind of half-finished thing is enough for us to get to the next thing. Yeah. And people could see that, and that can be quite frustrating when you go, but if we just spent a little bit more time on this, we wouldn't have the issues down the track. But when you're dealing with a program that is so big and complex, a little bit more time on everything,
doesn't get anything done. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So there were some struggles. For the most part, though, people got it. When you'd hear people going, "Oh, well, that's not perfect, it's fit for now," and I think it really helped break down some of that for a lot of people.
And that's really beautiful shared language, because we know that one of the ways that another burnout prevention is people being able to communicate easily, and shared language is what enables communication. Yeah. That's great. And tell me, in terms of the skills that you most want to, if we look towards the next 12 to 18 months, what are the skills that you most want to develop in your staff and in your leaders?
I think for us and where we're going with embedding some of these ways of working and potentially looking at how we're organised and what our operating models are that are set up to enable those ways of working, having an adaptive mindset is most important. We want people to be able to flex, be able to take ownership of their work, make decisions, keep things transparent, work with others, be okay with that kind of fit for now mindset, even if we're moving past that into our next phase. Just being open to the possibilities, I suppose. And as our two businesses continue to come together, that will be super important for our success if people are open-minded and wanting to genuinely explore possibilities together rather than picking one way or the other.
This is music to my ears. I've been saying for the last, 8 months that I think the core skill for leaders is way power, not willpower. The ability to collaborate effectively and bring people along to explore possibilities. Because when we're facing into uncertainty, you cannot put your hand on your heart and say, we're going there. You have to say, we're going in this direction and we're not quite sure how we'll get there. That's really exciting. And in terms of, so being able to explore possibilities, that requires a very different leadership skill set than control and command.
It does, yeah. And I think, like I talked about in the integration program, that pushing decisions down and that top sort of group not making any decisions or making, I think, maybe one the whole way through. That is hard for traditional leaders who are used to making decisions, being across what their people are doing at all times. And so that will definitely be a challenge for a lot of people. How do we help them to let go a little bit?
And what's helping? Like what kind of things is there particular training people need, or how's that working?
We've got an adaptive leadership program that we're running. I think we're in the second or third iteration of that now, and that will continue. What has been quite cool about that, and I think, as a comms person, everything that you say and how you do it contributes to the culture and what people believe. So what's been cool about that program is that it's not just for leaders. It's actually, it is actually, because everyone's leaders, but it's not for people with defined people leadership roles. It's for anybody who's a leader in the business.
Yeah.
Which could be anyone at any level. And I think as we continue running that program, I haven't been on it myself, but I'm very keen to, we'll start to hit that bit more of a critical mass where we've got these people going back to their teams, whether they're in a people leadership position or not, and sharing what they've learned, sharing their new ways of thinking, and asking the good questions to help shift those things along, and what they're focused on in that leadership program is things like, how do you tackle and get around a complex issue? So I think with traditional leadership, you look at a complex issue. An example of one that I think the group are working on is, how do we mobilize talent across our organization? Traditional leadership would look at that and think, well, there will be one solution to that. We just need to find it and do it. Adaptive leadership is understanding that when it's a complex issue, it can't really be solved. You can nudge it with different things. So getting right around the problem and understanding it fully and what feeds into it, what's causing it. There'll be many, many causes and many, many outcomes. What are the things that you can do to nudge some of those causes?
Where are the drivers? And which ones have you got most leverage on? Which ones can you move most cost effectively? All of those things. Yeah.
Absolutely. But knowing that it's a test and learn approach. You can do something, nudge it, see what happens, maybe nothing, maybe something unexpected, and try again, try something different. So that kind of thought pattern of how we approach problems and address things in the business will be quite key to how we move forward.
Because that is the core of developing an adaptive organization, isn't it? It's not just saying we will be adaptive, but building the skills to test, the willingness to test and learn, try and be wrong, do something else. And it goes against the grain for so many of us, in terms of how we've been trained and what we've been promoted for. So I think there's the learning the skills of new ways of working, but also, I presume in this adaptive leadership, there's also the support for how do you change mindset, habits, beliefs, behaviors too. Yeah.
The leadership program is really about mindsets. I think it's the biggest thing. But in saying that, there's also a level of rigor and discipline required with adaptive. It's not just like airy-fairy, we're going to be out here doing whatever we want, exploring possibilities. It is about being high-performing and getting great things done, but also knowing that the path may change as you go. So that's when we think about our operating model and how we organise ourselves, and some of that rigor will come in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, mindsets is key.
I love that you're describing, which is what I'm hearing from most organizations, that it's adapted. It's like we're adaptive in the way that works for us. It's not taking it as a kind of rigor religion. It's something that we do what works for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I commend organizations like Spark, who kind of led the way with some of this, but they did like a big bang all-in-one change. And having talked to some people there recently, they're quite different now from where they were 5 years ago when they did that big bang change. And it's because they've learned along the way and tweaked. And they've kind of done the reverse of what we'll be doing, which is tweaking as we get to whatever works. But it's kind of a new world of work. We don't know what will work really well and what won't, and we can just try it out and see. And if the mindset's right, people can cope with that, I think. So
you're saying Spark went big bang, we're doing this, and then adapt. And you're saying we're bringing this in small ways and adapting as we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More so. I mean, there are elements of our business now where we're starting to structurally change things, but I think people are ready for that. A lot of people have already been working in those ways. So it's different. Yeah, it's not the big bang. You're now all in tribes and squads, and now you have to figure that out. You've kind of got the skills.
We've introduced it. We're working in this way now. Should we do more of it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, and also the retail integration has been so successful. We've got a proof point. This works. This enabled us to achieve all of these things. As we go forward, what might it help us achieve?
Nice. Yes, it's rather than saying we'll do big bang across the organization, we've done a really successful introduction of this model for a core business project, really. Yeah. This is great. And are you seeing any, I know I've asked you about this, but I'm coming back to it because what you're describing is really exciting to me in terms of the organization culture that is evolving and growing. And are you hearing any anecdotal evidence or seeing any data that says people want to stay?
Want to stay at the org or want to stay with the ways of working?
Want to stay at Mercury. Want to stay, that's like, I like my job. I've no plan to leave. Yeah,
I mean, I'm not fully in the data, but I know that our turnover numbers are decreasing for sure. Like I talked about earlier, can't necessarily put that down to all just us because there's obviously job market stuff happening out there. It's not as easy to go and get a new job. But our levels of, we don't do a traditional engagement survey. We have quite a highly customized employee survey, so can't talk to engagement specifically. But our scores across the board are still really high.
And what do you pulse on?
We've just realigned our survey to be aligned to our adaptive pillars of our adaptive framework, so that we're trying to kind of understand how are we going, where are we getting to, without having it in front of me. It's things like embracing transparency, being set up to collaborate and deliver value together, working towards a clear purpose and sort of shared goals, all of those sorts of things. And it's quite cool that we've realigned our survey under this, because now we can see where are the real opportunity areas.
And what do your staff tell you is most important to them?
We ask a couple of open-ended questions in those surveys, which gives us the best insight of what's important to people, what's going well and what could be doing better. When people talk about what's going well, they talk about flexibility, which they have. So they really appreciate that. They talk about our communications and the information that's available to them. There's a flip side to that sometimes people find it hard to navigate that, but for the most part, people appreciate that. They talk about the EMT korero, the connection to our leaders and having that regular channel.
What did you call that? MT korero?
EMT korero.
Okay.
Yeah, that's our name for it. So those things which really speak to what we know is important, flexibility, connection, really, and having information accessible.
I'm imagining that the work you've done so far allows Mercury to feel that you are building on a really solid platform.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. We have a shared purpose, which has been really well received. That's a great platform to build off to continue driving the purpose in the organisation. We're building shared language, not only in the integration program, but around things like our purpose and our attitudes or our values and what our long-term aspirations are, all the things that kind of make up our strategic direction. So, and people have tried out new ways of working with great success, which gives us a great springboard to continue trying them out and hopefully to win over some of the different areas of the business who might be not so willing, or it might not be as obvious what those ways of working might mean for them right now.
And look, just last, I'm looking at the time and going, last 1 minute question. And I'll open a huge question. One of the issues that is kind of coming more into conversation in organizations is around, we know that we need planetary sustainability, but we also need human sustainability and thinking about the long-term sustainability of workloads. Is that something that's coming in? Is that on the agenda at Mercury?
Yeah, workload always is, and it is striking the right balance between those protective factors that allow people to perform really well, but also what is too much for a person to handle, and I think that, I hope that as we continue to become more adaptive and we build our leadership capability in that space where people are making better decisions around their own work, they've got increased ownership, but the transparency is also there, and we've got leaders who are really skilled in those ways of working, that they can support people to make the right decisions around their work and define what's really important, fit for now, or are we going 100%?
Lovely. And I think fit for now is a really helpful value to encourage sustainable working.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. I really just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today, because it's been really inspiring. Working a lot with burnout, I'm really aware of all the things that aren't going well. And so to get to hear all of the things that are happening and all of the progress that's happening at Mercury is really, it is actually inspiring. It is hope-filling.
Yeah.
These are good things.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for talking to me today.
You're so welcome. Thank you very much.
You've been listening to Making Work Better, recorded for ORFM Dunedin. To learn more about how you can make work better for yourself, your team, or your workplace, keep listening to this series and go to nziwr.co.nz to download your free copy of the Making Work Better report. Thanks for listening today. If you've enjoyed the show, please rate the podcast to help others who might benefit from it find it more easily. This podcast was produced by ORFM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.